Here we are working back on the 2023 ZX4RR. Today we're going to work on the shift rod assembly down here. So you can see on Kawasaki the shift rod's on the bottom, and it's quite a long rod. A lot of bikes put it on the top here, but we've got it down here. And the problem is the rod is so long that sometimes when you're shifting really hard on track, you're going to get a lot of bend on this rod, and it's going to cause you to have misshifts. It's also been known to cause some serious transmission problems over time. So the solution for that is to put a shift rod support bracket in place. So I've got one here from Race Torque. I saw this online. I thought it was a nice kit, so I figured I'd pick that up and install it. So let's see, they give you a nice package here. We've got all the hardware, some grease for this rod, some new bolts to replace your old ones, some spacers, and then we have the shift rod support assembly itself here. There's two different types of shift rod support assemblies. One of them is a bushing type support rod, so it's got a little metal bushing, and then we have here, you can see this one's a bearing type. I chose the bearing type because it's serviceable. So you can see that bearing is pressed into the housing. So over time I can grease this to keep it lasting. I can also just replace the bearing. If I'd got a bushing type, I wouldn't be able to really service it as well. So I think this is a better choice, and it's going to last a whole lot longer throughout the life of the bike. Of course, provided you do some general maintenance to it. There's other companies that make this. This is just the one that I found that looked like good quality, so we'll go ahead and get right into it and get this installed on the bike. So first thing you're going to want to do is remove your shifter. So there's a single bolt on there to remove that. Mine's right there. It's not the factory bolt, but that's alright. You're also going to want to make sure that your shifter is marked. You can see mine's marked before. There's a little line that lines up with that notch. That's so that you can put the shifter back in the same place you took it off. So we'll go ahead and pull this bolt out here. Mine's already loose. I did that beforehand, so we'll just unthread that. Again, this isn't the factory bolts. I lost mine before, so I had to throw this one in quick in order to finish the day at the track. So now we've got the bolt off, you can take and so now you can just grab your shifter and give it a little wiggle. It'll come off the splines, and behind it you can see we have two 8mm bolts. One is on the engine side here, and the other one is on the cover for the front sprocket. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. You can see here I've removed those bolts. The new hardware is longer than both of those, so that's great. And what's going to happen is we're going to take this, and it's basically going to install there. So that's kind of how it looks. You can see with the test fit that doesn't really fit the greatest. It's supported on one side by that front sprocket cover, but the other side we are going to need to use some of the supplied hardware. So we're going to need one of these spacers. It does have a spare one in case you don't have this clutch cover, but I'm just going to need, you can see if I'm going to need just one spacer, I'm just going to check again, make sure everything fits. So the spacer is going to sit on that side at the bottom, and then the front sprocket cover on the other, so that should support this shift rod assembly just fine. So the next step we're going to need to do here is clean the shift rod. We are putting a bearing on there, so get yourself a nice cloth. I've put some brake cleaner on it, so I'm just going to wipe this shift rod clean. We don't want any debris getting into our new assembly. And see, it's pretty dirty. Now we're going to take the supplied grease and go ahead and pack the bearing. It's pretty easy to do. I find a little finger fits good, so just make sure you wipe lots of grease into that bearing until it's all full and there's no more air pockets. Repeat as necessary, just a little bit at a time, and keep smearing it in and rotating the bearing. Make sure you get everything in there. You don't want to have any voids inside your bearing that's going to cause it to prematurely wear. Just take a look after, you can see all that's nice and full of grease, so we're good to install it. So now we've got this all lubricated. It's now going to take and put a little bit of that assembly grease on the shift rod itself. That's just going to help it slide over, make sure there's no problems in fitment, nothing's going to get hung up on anything. So get that greased, and then our shift rod support bracket is going to install onto that shift rod with the writing out, or if you don't have writing, just make sure that the seal is on the outside. We'll get our little spacer that we need in this application as well to go in behind this bolt, and then we'll go ahead and tighten it down onto the bike. So these are 5mm Allens in this supplied kit. So got one tightened with the spacer just so it doesn't fall out, and now I'll start installing the other bolts here. When you're putting these in, don't tighten one of them all the way. Go back and forth between them just to make sure that you're pushing this bearing nice and smooth and level onto the bike. We don't want it to sit crooked or to bind on anything. So as you can see, I'm going to go back and forth between these two bolts a couple times, just slowly moving the bearing onto the bike to make sure that it's installed level so that we've got nice smooth operation. Once you're tight, that's really all there is to it. The shift rod support's fully installed. It's pretty easy to do. Now all we have to do is reassemble our shift linkage. Remember when you're doing that to pay attention to the mark on your end of your shift rod so that you can make sure to line up the notch or on this assembly. You want to make sure that your shift rod goes back on exactly as before. Just like that. Another good thing you can do while you have this off, make sure you've got lots of smooth action here, no binding. And when you go to reassemble this, take a longer bolt than factory, thread it through here. And once you get that threaded all the way through your clamp, a good habit is to take a nylock nut on the other side and put it on. These shift rod bolts have been known to vibrate loose if you're riding hard at the track, and nothing is going to wreck your track day more than losing your shifter. Happened to me a couple weeks ago, so I'm just going to put this bolt on temporarily, make sure that it's not hitting anything as I move it, and I'll pick up a nylock at the hardware store and tighten this down. But that's all there is to this. It's about a 5-minute job to put this shift rod support on, and it is going to help improve your shift feel and, more importantly, prolong the life of your transmission. So hopefully everyone found this helpful.